Welcome to the Big Bag. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by Nick Brookes. The Big Bag is your weekly update on the world of franchise cricket. Of course, it's franchise cricket Christmas at the moment because we are right in the midst of the IPL. It's week 2. And Nick, we're starting to see some definite trends, aren't we?
Yeah, man. There's stuff keeps happening. I think that it's interesting because there's the split. You've got the two teams who've only played 2 games at the top of the table, Delhi and Punjab. And then a lot of teams who've got this identical record, played 3, won 1, lost 2, which I think is going to make for a really interesting weekend because you've got a repeat of last year's final today, KKR Sunrisers. So one of those teams is going to have lost 3 of their first 4 and have a really bad net run rate. So being pretty deep water with still, 10 group games to play. The same situation is in play with Lucknow Mumbai tomorrow, right? One of those teams is going to lose. One of them will have lost 3 of their first 4. And then if Rajasthan lose to Punjab on Saturday, they could be 1 win out of 4 games as well. So we're starting to see already early in the season potentially a divide between the haves and the have-nots. It's been an interesting one, Marky, because it's been pretty unpredictable year in the IPL thus far, right? Kind of a bit of an everyone beats everyone feel. And also, man, another thing that's just struck me is how many players are coming out of the woodwork from absolutely nowhere who've never played in the SMAT or have played very little. My opinion before this, which was unfounded, in fact, was that if you can't get into a SMAT team, you're probably pretty bad at cricket. And clearly that is just not the case, because it's not, as we said last week, it's not 1 or 2 guys now. It's a whole host of guys who are coming straight out of domestic leagues into the IPL and are doing really, really well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Just in case you've never come across us before, with a Big Bag, we are part of the Cricket Smash family. Follow us on YouTube, follow us across our socials. We will get more active across them. I've had a really hectic week. I'm trying to move country, so it's a bit crazy. And Nick's going off on holiday for a few days.
It's all right for some. I've had a hectic week too. I've been without a phone for 3 or 4 days.
Exactly. But yeah, follow us. Tell us what you think. Leave us your comments. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Yeah. So last year, Nick, was all about the league was rewarding teams that just went hell for leather from right at the beginning of the overs, right at the beginning of the innings. It was about trying to maintain a positive or as high a strike rate as possible and get as big a score as possible. This year, I wonder if it's kind of a slight tactical changes taking place, and actually teams are being rewarded for batting with a little bit more constraint. I'm starting to we've heard this for a little while now. People talk about 20 overs is actually quite a lot. You know, if you come in the 12th to 13th over mark, there's still a lot of batting to be done. And actually, whether tactically the whole just trying to tee off from the first ball is starting to feel a bit like the wrong way to build results. It's too early in the season to win this league. It's too early in the season really to get the kind of form that might drive you to the final. But it is early enough in the season to knock yourself out of the tournament totally, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think we've seen it with Sunrisers last couple of games, right? They managed to get to 190 last Thursday, but that wasn't enough. And then on Sunday, they were all out for 163, going really hard. And I think they were pretty much 5 down by the end of the power play. I think clearly going hell for leather from ball 1 is a risky tactic, even if you're with the impact sub batting, with pretty frontline batters down to number 8. I wonder, Marky, I think we have seen often scores under 200 being chased down really comfortably, right? So still, you've got to be thinking well beyond that 200 mark, but maybe the target shouldn't be 280, 300 and should be more like 230, 250. And I think the way that you can get there, especially with how much power there is in these teams, if you can it's a very old-fashioned way of looking at it. But if you can build a platform, right? If you can get to that 13, 14 over mark with 1 or 2 wickets down, given the power and the depth that teams have, it's not unrealistic to think that you can go at what 13s, 14s, 15s for the last 6, 7 overs. And I mean, I'm just doing some basic maths in my head. What 15 sixes is 90, so you can add 90 runs in the last 6 overs. I think fairly comfortably if you've got wickets in hand and you back your guys to clear the boundaries on a big pitch. So maybe is it but slightly just, I don't know, slightly rethinking the approach. That said, there have been occasions where, you know, it's looked like the batting is easiest in the power play when the ball is hard, and once the ball gets a bit soft, it gets harder to bat on. So it's tricky, man, right? I think one of the beautiful things about T20 cricket is that you never quite know what a pass score is, and momentum can really knock you dead in your tracks. So it's a constant kind of equation that teams have to figure out in their heads. They want to get obviously as many runs on the board, but I think you look at Sunrisers, they can't afford too many more games where they flop and are all out for 150 and get blown away. So yeah, it's that risk-reward balance which has to be constantly weighed up. And I think you're getting to the stage in the season already, although we still feel like we're right at the start of the season, where teams maybe have to start thinking, we'll go a little bit less risky. We'll make sure we get, you know, a decent score, a 210, a 220, and back ourselves to defend it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the scores now. I mean, I'm just going through all the results. Getting over 200. I mean, all the talk was this is going to be I'm going to see the first 300 game, right? Coming into the season. Getting over 200 is still quite an achievement and still a reasonably rare thing that happens. Because I also think that early on in the season, we saw a lot of teams get their bowling lineups or misread pitches and not quite play the best their best attack at the right moments, right? As we're getting more data, obviously teams are getting better at picking the right people to play at the right time. So I think kind of in a way, runs are not in a way, it just the data stresses, runs are becoming harder. Wickets are almost becoming easier because there's more pressure on the batter to go. And actually, you know, some of the sides that you know, the 2 finalists last year need to rethink this a little bit. Because, you know, as you say, Nick, they have brought themselves to the business end of the tournament early on prematurely because of essentially, I mean, I want to say rash batting, but actually I think that's unfair because I think they're being told to go out and go, right, Travis, just go for your life. Right?
Yeah, I think the message is definitely like go out and swing. But you're right, Marky. We haven't seen a 200 plus score for since game 5. We're now coming up today to game 15. So we've had 9 games on the bounce where 200 hasn't been breached. I think guess the flip side to that is we saw like yesterday 170 chased down really easily, right? On Sunday, that Sunrisers 163 chased down without any fuss. This time last week, LSG chased down that 190 really easily. So it's strange because, you know, those scores often, I think you're thinking 170 to 200 on a flat pitch. Is it good enough? Probably not. But then I think, that doesn't mean that you have to be thinking 280.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing that we're starting to see, and I don't know if you agree with this, is I'm not sure there's a really good lower middle order in the league at the moment. Like, I think on paper coming into it, you'd say maybe KKR had the best one with Dre Russ coming in at 8 some of the time, and then you've got Ramandeep and Rinku in front of him. But none of those guys have scored a run all year. And like you're looking around the league and you're thinking, who's really strong in that kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 region? And I'm not finding too many teams at the moment.
So if I was trying to figure out if you were like, right, how do you win an IPL game right now? I would say the 2 things you want to do is you want to get your best batters or your best strikers off the ball striking the ball in the first 6 overs and in the back 4 overs, right? And I think at the moment, not enough of that is happening. And part of the reason for that is because the lower middle orders are often coming in too early in the match, and therefore are being asked to do too much. And also, when you come in early, generally that means that the bowling team has got momentum and has got their tails up as well. I also think I made this point last week, and I kind of said it, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'm talking nonsense because of your reaction. So I've kept looking for it this week, and that's that the impact sub, when things go wrong, just gets used in the wrong place. I still believe that is happening. I think teams panic too quickly, and that kiboshes lower middle orders as well. They are the lower middle orders are the victims of the bad planning, or I'm not sure it necessarily is bad planning, because I think if you sat down before the season with the team at SRH or with KKR and said, right, our plan is we're going to go hell for leather, and we know with this tactic that sometimes it's going to go wrong, and you go, right, in the group stage it's gone wrong, let's say it goes wrong 4 times, they would probably take that. Well, they probably weren't expecting it to go wrong twice, or potentially today for one of those sides it's going to go wrong 3 times in the first 4 games.
In the first 4 games, and yeah, that leaves you just with a mountain to climb.
Yeah, that's what they've.
I think Sunrisers will be all right. I think that they will. I mean, I back them to beat KKR today, because I think KKR are in a bit of trouble. Aside from their spinners, I'm not liking the look of this team a lot at all right now. I don't love their seam bowling. I don't love their top order, and that middle order just hasn't fired at all. You'd think it would come good at some point, but like time's running out for them.
We talked a lot about the teams at the bottom. Should we talk about the teams at the top?
Yeah, and actually, like, I just checked myself, and I said that no one's got good lower middle orders. I think the 2 teams at the top, Delhi and Punjab, do, although we haven't seen that much of them. Delhi have got, who they've got, probably Akshar at 5, Stubbs at 6, Ashutosh at 7. I really like that. And then Vipraj Nigam came in that game that they won the crazy game over LSG and slammed 39 off 15. And you look at what Punjab have got that they haven't actually needed at all yet. The likes of Maxi, Stoinis, Shashank, and that guy who I'm really excited about, Suryant Shedge, that I've heard might be Shedgay, that I'm saying it wrong. But they've got a bit of depth. So yeah, those 2 teams, I like them. I especially like Punjab.
Yeah, you've been quite high on Punjab since the beginning. I mean, I came into this tournament, or this iteration tournament, going, Punjab are kind of the joke side in all of this. I know there's been a lot of changes in the organisation, but I suspect that, in my mind, they're kind of the Tottenham of the IPL, right? You always think like they've got to get it together, this is going to be it, but then it just all fades away and ridiculous things happen to them. But so far, and I should reiterate, it is very early on, and also, as you say, I think it's important to note their low middle order hasn't really been tested. They haven't had a pressure, a big, the top order's taking all the pressure off them. So far, though, it's going quite well, isn't it?
Yeah, man. And I think you've got to look at their new captain, Shreyas Iyer, having a huge part to play in this, right? I think everyone, myself included, when he went for that huge fee, was saying that he was overpriced. But thus far, he's got a 97 not out and 50 not out, right? I don't think he's been dismissed yet. He's striking well over 200. I've never seen him bat better. He just looks like he's in a real groove. And everything that's in his zone is going over the boundary ropes. It's great to see a player who, is well established. We've seen him around in the IPL for 6-7 years. It's great to see players at that stage in their career, finding new gears and keeping on developing the new environment. The reunion with Ponting seems to be going great. And then, you know, they've had at the top, they've got Prab Simran, who's a guy who we've known about, but who looks to be still on that upward curve, keeping on getting better, maybe not too far away from an India call if he keeps going. And Priyansh Iyer, I think someone who no one had ever really heard of, just doing bits, coming out really aggressive in the power play, going from ball one. That top three has done so much heavy lifting. But then on the other side of things, man, I think they've just got really good death bowling, right? You look at Arshdeep, he's going well. Marco Janssen is going well. They bring in Vaishak to bowl these wide Yorkers, and he's done good so far. They've got the spin of Yuzi Chahal, and so many all-rounders in their team means they've got flexibility, right? They've been getting a couple of overs from Stoinis. They've been getting a couple of overs from Maxwell. They've got options to turn to. Shedgay is a bowling all-rounder or a genuine all-rounder. He hasn't bowled a ball yet. So they've got, I like what they've got going on. They clearly are thinking kind of horses for courses, because they brought Lockie Ferguson in the other night to give him a bit more ballast with the ball. Josh Inglis, who we talked about as someone who could be a kind of breakout star, hasn't had a sniff of game time yet. So I really like Punjab top to bottom, and I think I expect them to be in the top four. And now I'm thinking, having seen them play twice, they could be a team that goes all the way.
How far do Punjab need to go this season for Shreyas Iyer to be the best value signing or best big money signing, or to justify the price tag that they paid for him?
Well, look, man, he's already got 150 runs, right? We talk about 400 being a good season, 500 being a really good season. So he only needs another 250 to get to 400. And he's got a minimum 12 innings to do that. I think he'll cruise past 400, and I'd expect him to be closer or above that 5 mark. And I think, you know, Punjab, famously an IPL franchise who haven't had a load of success. So I think if he takes them to a playoff berth, if he takes them to a final, you'd have to say that he's been worth every penny. I mean, you look at the other 2 big Indian buys. I think Rishabh Pant was generally seen as being the kind of best value for money, but he can't buy a run. Venki Iyer, it's also a really looking like a tough situation for him thus far. You know, it's only been 3 games, but I think he's got 9 runs at the moment, striking well under 100. I think he's 9 runs off 16 balls so far in this tournament. And I mean, that to me looks like a massive overspend. I thought Pant, I didn't love it at the time, because I'm not sure that he's ever been, you know, a really one of the top batters in the league. I think if you look back at his data, his best seasons way back in 2018. And I just thought that buy left Lucknow a bit short-handed elsewhere, which I think we've seen, right? They look like a team who are hugely reliant on Nicky Pooran, and if he doesn't fire, they're struggling.
Can we talk about Delhi Capitals? Because whereas Punjab have a number of batters who've been in the runs, with Delhi Capitals, it seems to be a bit more kind of all hands on deck, right? Where they seem to kind of share it around a little bit. And of course, Smashatosh has been amazing, and Faf at the top of the order, but they haven't really been challenged hugely in terms of having to get the big runs at the moment, right?
No, I mean, Stark had a day out for them. When was it? Sunday. He was picking up power play wickets. If he can keep doing that, that helps, because we know he's high variance, right? He can take a bag full of wickets, but he can also go for runs. They've clearly got strength in that spin department, right? With Akshar and Kuldeep, 2 spinners who dovetail really nicely. I think if you worry about them, it's those backup seamers, Mohit Sharma and Mukesh Kumar. Are they kind of good enough? But I mean, you've got the batting I like it, right? Faf still seems to have it. Jake Fraser McGurk hasn't quite found his form. I mean, it was a pretty tortuous 38 the other night, but he dug in, he clung around, which is something that we don't kind of really expect to see from Jake Fraser McGurk. A lot of the time he's been try and slam the first ball into row Z, and if that doesn't work out, he's caught on the boundary fence. But I think we're seeing signs that he wants to score runs any way that he can. And then, I really like Abhishek Porel, KL Rahul playing in a different role to what we're used to seeing, coming in at number 4 and not looking to work the ball around. The other night he was going from ball 1, faced 5 balls, hit 3 of them to the boundary fence. So it'll be interesting to see if he carries on looking to bat in that way, to be a bit more of a blaster. And then, as you touched on, Marky, they got Stubbs, Akshar, Ashutosh to come after. So they bat deep. I like what they've got going around their squad. I mean, when you think, I don't want to go back to Dasson slating, but they could have, if they had Harry Brook in that group, or if they bought a more genuine kind of really like frontline high impact batter, I'd be even higher on Delhi. But yeah, I like them. I liked them at the start of the year. I think the caveat is that their squad depth isn't great. So if they have an injury or two, they could be in trouble. And I do think there are days where that attack, especially the seamers, are going to go for lots of runs.
I keep checking to see if there's been any confirmation that Dasan Shardaker is part of the Delhi Capital squad, and I cannot for the life of me find any anywhere.
Has that not been officially confirmed?
Well, they've never put anything out about it. I haven't seen it. If anyone's watching this and has seen it, let me know. I want to. That's why I had to go off camera for a minute, not because there was someone at my door.
He's got to be. He's got to be in the squad, right? They can't have brought him in as a net bowler. That just defies any kind of logic. Speaking of like kind of Sri Lanka watch, if we go down that alleyway for a bit, I wonder whether we might see Kamindu Mendes, because Zampa didn't feature for Sunrisers in their last game, right? And they had another unknown leggy with like very little SMAT experience, Zishan Ansari, come out and bowl really well. They could do, I think, with a bit more batting depth. Who is it? Aniket Verma has done really well for them. But Abhinav Manohar, to me, hasn't looked quite up to it yet. So whether they think about bringing Kamindu in to that kind of 6-7 role, because I think he probably offers more with the bat than Mulder. It's something I'm keeping an eye on. But isn't it great to see Patarana back bowling really well, to see Hasaranga in the wickets? It was a good day for Sri Lankan fans on Sunday, that Chennai Rajasthan match. As you said when I saw you the other day, Marky, we got 12 overs of real quality from our Lankan boys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great to see all the Sri Lankan bowlers that were on display that day offer something quite different. Hasi, Wani, Deeks, and Patarana. Patarana obviously is from the Sri Lankan sling school. There is another slinger in the league, Sri Lankan slinger in the league, in Numan Tushara at RCB, and I'm kind of being a little bit surprised we've not seen them play yet. Alongside, Kamindu obviously had like quite a breakout year last year, as did Tushara as well. So I thought the fact that slingers have had so much success in this league, Tushara had a bit of success, or had a decent season with Mumbai Indians last season. I thought at this point we'd definitely have seen him. And I think the worry is, from a Sri Lanka perspective, is that RCB are kind of doing all right and getting wickets and keeping scores down. So maybe we might not see Tushara unless there's a kind of bowling disaster.
I think they could use him, but I think it's just that the team balance doesn't allow it, right? Because they've got Bhuvi and Hazelwood going really well up front. Hazelwood looks in prime form. I don't think anyone expected him to bowl quite as well as he has done. I'd say, in my mind, there's quite a big drop-off then to their backup seamers in terms of Yash Dayal and Rasik Salam. But I think they're light on Indian batting. And so, they've got those 3 overseas batters, Salt, Livingston, David, 2 of whom you'd have to say have done pretty well, right? I think Tim David has enjoyed the change of scene and he's finishing innings off really well. Phil Salt, I think, has batted better than any England fan would have expected at the top of the order. Livy, I know he made 50 yesterday, but it was pretty darn scratchy. But he is offering them, an over or 2 of leg spin or mixed, his all sorts that he bowls. I'm not sure if they've got enough Indian batting in reserve to move away from that 3 overseas batter kind of format, which spells ominous for Tushara, because I think Hazelwood is going to play as much as he's available. He does seem to pick up niggles, so he might end up having to sit out a game or two, and that could be when Nuwan gets a go. But he's also competing with Lungi and Gidi, I think, for backup spots. So
yeah,
there's no guarantee that we see Tushara across this season, which is a shame because you want him to keep developing, right?
Yeah, and I do think of the Sri Lankan players who are there who aren't getting a game at the moment. He's, for me, seems like the most obvious one, because I think in this league, slingers have had so much success. As I've said earlier, I still think even in 2025, it's quite difficult for batters haven't quite got used to playing them yet. They're really good at either slowing down run rates or picking up wickets. So I'm surprised that they haven't made more of an effort to try and get him in. Let's see that, for a team like RCB that will be hoping that they're in the back end of the tournament. It seems really, there's a lot of cricket for them to play yet, so he might still kind of make it in. I think last year it took a few games for him to come into the Mumbai side, right?
Yeah, he didn't start the year. I remember, because they were starting with that young left armer Mafaka, weren't they? And everyone was kind of saying, where is Tushara? It's an interesting trend in this year's league. I don't know whether there's any basis to this, but I'm wondering whether overseas players having less impact than we've ever seen. Is it becoming more of a league where Indian talent is really, really kind of dominating? I'm just thinking, like, if you look around the league for overseas seamers who are really kind of smashing it, there aren't that many. Rashid Khan, much talked about, he's having a tough time. We're seeing a lot of and we're talking about Punjab potentially looking like the best team in the tournament so far, doing it really off the back of their Indian core, right? All Indian top 3, Arshdeep and Chahal kind of at the forefront of their bowling. So yeah, man, I wonder whether the league is getting more Indian. Another thing that I saw being talked about on social media this week was whether the possibility, the potential of a kind of IPL feeder league, which I think is something really interesting, because you'd have to say, I don't know much about the ins and outs and logistics of domestic Indian cricket, but something's going wrong if there are this many good players not playing in the SMAT, right?
Yeah, definitely. I see. I'm really surprised. So years ago, if you're just coming to the big bag and you've not come across content that me and Nick have done before, we do a Sri Lankan cricket show called Murali, and there's a few other people involved in that as well, who are obviously more than welcome to come on this show whenever they want. But in Sri Lanka, we have the LPL, the Lanka Premier League, and I've always felt that the future for the LPL should be try and be a nursery league for the IPL. If you look at the ILT20, if you look at the SA20, they've kind of positioned themselves when it comes to the kind of Indian market and who the owners are of the clubs there as a kind of feeder league or nursery league for overseas players to potentially get into, for teams to have a look at them before they go off into the big IPL league, right? I think that it's an absolute no-brainer to have a nursery league, and under 25s IPL or something similar to that. I think the clubs, the teams who want it, who are looking to build brands at their teams, will be desperate to get involved in playing actually playing more cricket and bringing younger players through. I do think though that the auction system and the way the contracts work is it disincentivizes teams to invest in young players.
Totally agree.
Though that said, I do think the clubs collectively have enough kind of, if they work together, they could put something in place with the organisers of the IPL, so that if they bring in young players, that they can have them, they get first refusal on them, or something as such as well.
Yes, so I've been thinking about this, and I firmly believe that if you've brought a player into the league and you've given him his debut, a domestic player, that you should have the right to match when it comes to the super auction. So I think Punjab found themselves in a situation at this super auction where they essentially had to make a choice between Shashank, Prabhsimran, and Ashutosh. They couldn't keep all three; they could only keep two because of the way the logistics of the super auction went. I think that in any case, if you've brought a guy in, especially a guy out of nowhere, you should always be able to right to match. So, and that way, teams have an incentive to kind of build this pipeline and bring young players in.
I think there's two things as well. There's two reasonings why the auction works the way it does. Firstly, I think it's because the BCCI want to have total and full control over player development and player pathways. And I don't know enough about player development and player pathways to work out whether or not that's a good or bad thing for the players. Secondly, I also think there's an element of, if you're an IPL team owner, it benefits you in terms of having what you pay. IPL players, in my opinion, are probably underpaid. Like, this league is making a lot more money than, like, as in the players are only getting a fraction of the money that the league actually makes. If you compare it to basically any other major professional sport on par with kind of IPL revenues, then they are chronically underpaid. But I think the auction system benefits the owners to kind of pay them less. Do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying that, they're not, they are low paid workers. They obviously aren't. But I do think that actually, if you look at the economics of it, they should be paid much more as a percentile of what the revenue is. But I think the system is set up kind of against the players. I suspect the BCCI would be reluctant to hand over more kind of player development control to the clubs, because it kind of, I suppose, in a way, kind of erodes what the BCCI actually do. If you look at the way football's gone in England, for example, where you've got a league in the English Premier League that's kind of equivalent to the IPL in terms of its power and finances and eyeballs, and where it sits in the kind of ecosystem of the sport that it plays. If you look at how much power the EPL, the Premier League, has over the FA now, the BCCI are probably looking at that and thinking, we do not want to be in that situation where we are, we have very little power and basically just reliant on World Cups and other international competitions to make money and to survive. Because, I mean, there's a lot, we're talking about the IPL, so we don't want to go into the kind of geopolitics of the BCCI. But what is undeniable is in the last few years, since the IPL has existed, is the money the IPL does make has filtered down on some degree. I'm sure, not as much as people wanted, or people have issues with it, but India is producing many more players than it's ever produced at a top level. And also, the domestic cricket has never been as strong as it is in India outside it. And the BCI are doing a lot of things to try and get players and parts of India developing and coming through the system. Like, whoever thought Nagaland would ever have a team, and now they do, right? So
yeah, it's been democratized, right? And I think the rest of the world catching India in terms of white ball teams is going to be a really tall order when you think of the strength and depth that they have.
Yeah, I do think it would benefit the rest of the world to have nursery leagues and kind of try and get the other IPL sides into more kind of player development stuff. If you look, the West Indies and Sri Lanka are probably the two sides that have benefited the most from IPL's sides coming and looking at young players, right? And we talked about Pasarana earlier. He's the best example of a young Sri Lankan player who's kind of looked at from his late teen or his kind of mid-teens almost, and now he's been brought through by CSK into, he's a fully formed international and an IPL world-class player. And SLC, kudos for it, but a lot of that is down to the work CSK have done with him. And it'd be amazing if the wider pathways were open, larger nets were cast, if they could start to do that around the world, because I live in Middlesex. I know you live in Surrey, Nick, but you know Middlesex do not have anywhere near the kind of money to invest in youth development that Rochester Royals might do, for example, if they were allowed to have more pathways into getting into the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's just a pleasure watching this league and seeing players emerge out of nowhere, right? It seems to be almost a daily occurrence at the moment. Ashwani Kumar was pretty exciting debut on Monday, helping Mumbai to get to their first win. Coming out of nowhere, picking up wickets. Great to see. And Mumbai, interesting one because there was a lot of negativity around them after those first couple of games. They're on the board now. Bolt and Shahad did what they do the other night and picked up power play wickets. Ryan Rickleton finally got a score, and I wonder if we might see them start to trend upwards a little bit, Marquis.
I'm going to say hopefully, because I think it's been a difficult few years for them, right? And you know, they've kind of tried to go back to what worked for them. I think though, for me, how far they go and if they can win it is all dependent on two players, Bumrah and Hardik, right?
Yeah, I think those guys have a big say. I think, undoubtedly it'd be helpful for them if they get a bit of form out of Rohit, 3 early dismissals from him. I mean, Sky is starting looking like he's starting to maybe show some of the form that we haven't seen from him as much over the past sort of year and a half. Tilak Varma, I'm super high on. We haven't seen the best of him thus far in this IPL. I still think that they're pretty well set up to make a push this year, especially if they get Bumrah back sooner rather than later. We were told April he'd be joining up with the squad, and it is now April. So something to keep an eye on over the coming days. I think, when are they next out? Is it Sunday?
Tomorrow. I think they're playing tomorrow. They're playing Lucknow.
Oh, they're playing tomorrow.
Yeah, Friday.
Okay, yeah. Who have they got? Oh, they've got Lucknow tomorrow. That's going to be an interesting one. And as we said, we talked about this at the start of the show. It's a must-win for both those teams, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Last week we were talking about how Lucknow had kind of defied the odds. Obviously, it was week 1, and they had a 50% win rate. This tomorrow's game or the next couple of games to them are probably the kind of it's the kind of acid test, isn't it? It's like, are they actually a good side, or are they as badly put together as everyone thinks they are?
Yeah, I'm still falling on the side that they're not a good side. I think I heard Dan Weston on another podcast say that he thought they were the worst IPL squad ever put together, which is very strong words. I mean,
the only thing I would say about that is so if you go back to the early years of the IPL, some of the squads that I put together were basically like red ball teams. So that's why I'm always slightly reluctant. But also, obviously, the early years of the IPL, no one kind of knew what they were doing, right? Because it was a totally new sport, effectively.
And I mean, I think if they can get Mayank Yadav back, then they've got something, a spearhead to kind of build around. They haven't shown any signs of being interested in getting Shamar Joseph on the park. I think the worry is that their batting seems to be heavily focused around Pooran, and their bowling just looks a little bit light. I think Prince Yadav missed out for them the other night after being really good in their last game. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But again, it's really early to tell, right? And I was just looking at last year's table, and actually 7 wins was what got you into the playoffs. Admittedly, it needed a good net run rate because 4 to 7 all were on 7 wins. But there's nothing to say that 1 from 4 that you still can't go on a tear. There's still 10 group games to go. So you're not out of it, but you've given yourself a what's the opposite of a head start?
A false start.
A full start, a golfing handicap with the Masters coming up.
The only team we haven't discussed thus far, I think, is the Titans.
Okay, I like them, although they did something really weird yesterday, which was they played the bowling innings with 2 overseas players. I think Rabada was unavailable because of personal reasons. Then they brought in Shafane Rutherford for the batting innings, but that meant they only fielded 3 overseas players, which essentially equates to that they picked either Shah Rukh Khan or Rahul Tewatia over Glenn Phillips, which is a bit of a head scratcher. As it turned out, it didn't matter at all because they cruised. And I think, the headline here is that the top order is going to cruise them to a lot of games. You think chasing what they were chasing yesterday, 170, that's the kind of target that's made for Sudarshan, Gill, and Butler, right? You'd have to say the question mark over that top 3 is whether they can push into that next gear. But I really like them, man. Saika Shaw has been bowling fantastically. I'm sure they'd like to get more out of Rashid Khan, who seems to be bowling a bit too quickly, maybe a little bit googly heavy. He hasn't been taking wickets with his leg break as much in recent times. The middle order is possibly a bit callow. But Siraj was great up front yesterday too, right? And I think there was talk about Siraj, Krishna, Rabada as a seam attack. You don't know what you're going to get. They're a bit like what we said with Mitchell Stark. Like they can take wickets, but they can also go about. Yesterday, Siraj took wickets up front. I wonder whether it's going to be a good season for him, and we're going to see more of him taking wickets than we are going for 50 from 4.
Can I speak about one of my favourite IPL players who's emerged in the last few seasons? That's Sai Sudarshan. I had a big discussion with Jared Kimber at the back end of last year's IPL because I said he was an absolutely brilliant player, and Jared was of the opinion that he scores runs too slowly. That's almost kind of to go full circle what we talked about at the beginning of the show. I think you've got to be in it to win it, and actually this season thus far seems to be the kind of return of the anchor, and Sai Sudarshan is the perfect player to build an innings around, in my opinion. And also he kind of does have gears. I think people
I think he does have some gears, and what he has, which is really rare in this league, is consistency. I heard something, and I'm going to mangle this stat, but it was about in his last 10 innings, I think he's reached 30 in all of them, or all bar one. He started off this year with a 74, a 63, and a 49 yesterday. I've got to say, during that game against Mumbai on Saturday, when the boundaries dried up for him after the power play, I was kind of screaming at my TV saying, like, get going, Sai, get going. He obviously wasn't hearing me, and he didn't need to, because what they put on the board was more than enough to win them the game. So I think there's something to be said for, he seems to be a player who can identify what a good score is and bat in the proper way. And, that
he reads the pitch well, right?
He seems to, and that's a rare skill. I mean, Gill hasn't really got going for them this year, but I think still Gill has gotten enough of a start that every time Butler's come in kind of at a decent entry point, right? They haven't been 5 for 1 yet. And, we said that top 3 was going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting, but they look to have the muscle to do it. I like Shafane Rutherford, I think, more than a lot of people do. He was really impressive, I think, in an ODI series against Sri Lanka just before Christmas. And
but that's normal, isn't it? Players turn up to Sri Lanka and become their prime optimum.
Yeah, that is. I mean, anyone turns up Sri Lanka and becomes Viv Richards.
That's what Sri Lankan hospitality is all about.
But clearly Gujarat rate him because they're picking him over Phillips. Considering they went quite well with the ball yesterday in Rabada's absence, I wonder whether there's a thought in their minds that maybe they can go more Indian heavy in their bowling attack and get Phillips and Rutherford into that top 5. Because I mean, then if you look at Gill, Sudarshan, Butler, Phillips, Rutherford, that starts to look pretty daunting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, should we leave it there? We've been banging on for about 45 minutes about your favourite Premier League, Indian.
Yeah, my favourite Premier League, especially because I can't bear to watch Chelsea play. But Liverpool got a win last night, Mark. He eked out
Liverpool
a win.
got a win.
I thought the goal
it
should
was
have been disallowed, but Tarkowski should have been sent off. So I guess that about evens it up.
Did you think the goal should have been disallowed? Why do you think he was offside?
I
Or
thought
do
he
you
was
think
offside. Clearly,
Diaz was offside in the build-up?
Yeah, Diaz was offside. And he clearly impacted the play. No,
I thought he was offside, but then he got played onside because actually there was an interception, and then I thought the goal should have stood. Like,
I thought the interception
but also
would have been made if he wasn't offside, so he was interfering with play. But hey, I'm not a ref. We're so
in my defence, what I will also say is I think, because obviously I am a biased Liverpool fan, but I think Beto's goal, I thought that should have stood because I didn't think he was offside when he scored. But it is what it is. I do think, obviously, Tarkowski should have been sent off. Jordan Pickford should be in prison now because I've seen him a number of Liverpool players over the years, including Virgil van Dijk and yesterday Darwin Núñez. I'm joking, of course. I do not believe a player should be put in prison for that. But yeah, it was a good win. I hate the derby. I mean, I love it, but also it's so
happy to get through it.
Happy to get through it.
But yeah, this is my favourite Premier League, and I'm very sad that I'm going to be missing KKR SRH tonight because I'm travelling. But I think it's in for a cracker. So if you aren't out of the house, make sure to have your telly on.
AJ sent us this question: is Kamindi going to get his chance? I think so. I think if he's not in the team today, the next time they lose, he'll be in the team.
We hope so. I think if as Marky says, if he doesn't get his chance today, I think there may be one more collapse away from bringing him in. We saw Mulder at the weekend. I think Kamindu is a better batter than Wian Mulder, so I hope we're going to see him. I thought we might see him start the year, though. There's been no sign of Rahul Chahar. I don't know if he's injured or what's going on there. They've found another good domestic leg spinner in Zishan Ansari. So, yeah, keep your eyes peeled for whether Kamindu gets on the park.
Wicked. Right, we've been the big bag. Follow us. Tell all your friends about us. See us. Leave you some messages. Leave us your comments. We'll be back at some point next week. See you later. Bye.
Bye.